Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Cincinnati Reds Weekly Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for the Cincinnati Reds Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster, and today we are going to discuss Matt Davidson, whether his power could earn him a lineup position. We're going to talk about Van Meter, whether he will make the roster. I don't think he will. And we're going to look at some replacements for Freddie Galvis at shortstop. And our history today is Wayne Simpson, 1970. A lot of you guys may not remember him, but what might have been if Wayne Simpson did not get injured? We're going to start off by looking at this Reds roster, especially Matt Davidson, and I think his power landed him a minor league contract with the Reds this offseason, and I think in the end it could eventually end up landing a spot on the big league roster. Now, the fight for the final spot on the Reds roster will be an interesting one to watch. We all know Kyle Farmer is virtually assured of a spot on the Reds bench, but who's going to get the last spot? A player that nobody is talking about is Matt Davidson. If Eugenio Suarez's injury lingers into the regular season, Davidson could find a spot on the roster. Now, Farmer has separated himself from the rest of the Reds bench players, and while Farmer doesn't play the outfields, his ability to pick up a glove and play all four infield spots, plus put on the catcher's gear and crouch behind the plate, make Farmer one of the most valuable players on the Reds this season. However, behind Farmer, there appears to be a race for the final spot among a clustered group of infielders. Derek Dietrich, Josh Van Meter, and Alex Blandino are vying for the other utility role. You could probably throw Christian Colon's name into the mix as well, but he appears much more of a long shot. The player not getting much recognition this spring, however, is third baseman Matt Davidson. The former White Sox infielder didn't play in the big leagues last season, but has quietly put together a nice spring. Davidson's round tripper in the game the other day against the Oakland A's, it kind of showed you what he can do. I mean, he hit 33 home runs last season for AAA Nashville. He had 46 home runs in 2017 and 2018 for the White Sox. Davidson can hit for power, but hitting for average is not his strong suit. The right-handed slugger has a career batting average of .226 and an on-base percentage below .300. Those are two of the areas that will limit Davidson's chances of making the 26-man roster out of Goodyear. Now, Davidson, much like Van Meter and Dietrich, can also play first base. While Joey Votto is, of course, the starting first baseman for the Reds headed into 2020, Davidson offers something that Van Meter and Dietrich do not, a right-handed bat. Now, David Bell, I heard on an interview, spoke about Davidson's ability after Friday's game. And Bell had this to say. He said, "We know he has power. He's impressed us with the way he can play first and third base. We saw today what he's capable of. Now, Bell has spoken highly about his players this spring, so I wouldn't read too much into what he said following, Friday's contest with the A's. However, if Suarez, who's still rehabbing the shoulder surgery, is unable to go once March 26 rolls around, I wouldn't discount Davidson's chances of making the roster. As it stands now, I'd give the nod to Derek Dietrich for the final spot, with Van Meter nipping at his heels. But with Davidson, you certainly have a player to consider, especially with a career slugging percentage of .432. Power is something, let's face it, you can't teach. Now, we talked about Van Meter. And I think with Van Meter, I think this is not a popular opinion, but I don't think he'll make the opening day roster. Now, if everyone on the Reds is healthy by March 26, Van Meter will not make the roster. Now, this is not me knocking the 24-year-old who's gotten off to a hot start this spring, but rather the reality of how deep this Reds team is heading into 2020. Van Meter will undoubtedly see some time in the bigs this season, but not on opening day. No one outside of Jose Garcia has had a better spring to this point than Van Meter. Last year, Van Meter surprised a lot of fans, coaches, and front office executives alike with his offensive outbursts to begin the minor league season at AAA. Van Meter's bat earned him a chance to make his major league debut just a few days after his best buddy, Nick Senzel, got his call up to the big leagues. Van Meter yo-yoed between Cincinnati and Louisville throughout the 2019 season, and between the two stops, Van Meter crushed 22 home runs and racked up 66 RBIs. So why won't a player, you might ask, with that type of bat, who's having a fantastic spring, not make the opening day roster? I think it simply comes down to numbers and options. Despite what Van Meter's done in Cactus League play, his chances of making the 26-man roster out of Goodyear are slim to none. We saw the same fate befall Phillip Ervin last spring. Now, he hit .341 in the spring, led the team in home runs with 5 in 2019 in Cactus League play, but Ervin did not make the opening day roster. Instead, the Reds' outfield consisted of Winker, Schebler, Puig, and Kemp. Now, this season, Ervin is batting... This season, Ervin is batting just as he did in 2019. But the 27-year-old is out of minor league options this season, giving him a leg up on the competition. Van Meter has 2 minor league options remaining, which gives Cincinnati the opportunity to send last year's rookie to AAA Louisville without subjecting him to waivers. The Reds' outfield, let's face it, is already loaded. Even though Van Meter can play the outfield, his attention this season has been as a utility infielder. The versatility of Van Meter's game will definitely increase his chances of making the cut, but Farmer has a lock on one of the 2 reserve infielder roles. That means that Van Meter will be battling the likes of Alex Blandino, Christian Colon, and Derek Dietrich for the final spot among Reds position players. Because of the veteran's track record, I'm going to give the nod to Dietrich at this time. Now, the best thing Van Meter can do to make the decision a difficult one for the coaching staff of the Reds front office is to just keep swinging away during spring ball. It may be incredibly difficult to keep Van Meter off the roster, however, but economics and the way the system works may relegate Van Meter to the minors to begin the season. Now, one of the big concerns I think the Reds have to have right now is Freddie Galvis. Now, we don't really have an update on the severity of the injury at the time we did the show. We know he was scratched from a couple games over the week, and he did undergo an MRI exam. Now, if Galvis' injury forces him to miss any time during the regular season, who will be the Reds' starting shortstop? Now, before you guys get carried away, we're looking at in-house options. There'll be no mention of Francisco Lindor or Corey Seager joining the Reds before opening day because, let's face it, it's not going to happen. If Galvis is unable to go March 26 against the Cardinals, the Reds will have to find someone who is currently in the organization. Another thing we're not going to entertain is Jose Garcia making the open day roster. Garcia has been the talk of spring camp, but the 21-year-old is yet to play above A ball. While Garcia may be Cincinnati's next big prospect to climb the ladder, he's at least a year or 2 away from making an impact at the big league level. One more player who's going to be taking balls at shortstop is Nick Senzel. I know that several fans, myself included, feel that last year's rookie can play that position. But the feeling is not necessarily mutual with the Reds coaching staff and front office. Bell has kind of went out of his way to dispel the notion that Senzel will be anything but a center fielder this season. So with our parameters set, where might the Reds turn to find a potential spot starter should Galvis miss any time to begin the 2020 season? There are several options, but some may be more likely than others, and we're going to look at those options. Number 1, of course, I think, as far as in-house options go, is Kyle Farmer. He's the most likely player to get the call on opening day should Galvis be unable to take the field. Farmer, who's never played shortstop at the major league level, has seen 3 starts at the position so far this spring, racking up 14 innings of work, recording 1 error and 9 chances. Is Farmer an elite defender? No, but he can hold his own. And last year, Cincinnati dispersed Farmer at nearly every infield position, including catcher. But the 29-year-old didn't find time at shortstop. That could change drastically in 2020, especially at the start of the season. Is Farmer an elite hitter? The answer to that is the same as above. He's unlikely to hit better than 250 or 260. He's a right-handed utility guy who slugged .410 last year, proving that he has the ability to send the ball out of the yard. But if Farmer is the Reds' opening day starter on March 26, he's likely to be hitting way down in the lineup. Having Farmer's bat in the number 8 hole is not the worst problem to have, as Galvis himself, career on-base percentage is .296. The biggest question mark, should Farmer get the call on opening day, would be on defense. Though he played shortstop in college, doing so at the major league level is an entirely different animal. though with the emphasis on defensive shifts being so prevalent nowadays, perhaps his lack of experience wouldn't be such a hindrance. Our number 2 choice would be Alex Blandino. Now, as far as defensive options go, Blandino is probably the best the Reds organization has to offer if Galvis is sidelined to begin the season. Blandino is experienced at shortstop, playing 11 games there in 2018 before he was upended trying to turn a double play and missed significant time with a torn ACL. The former Stanford standout was a first-round selection of the Reds back in 2014, and Blandino has slowly worked his way up the minor league ladder and is part of the 40-man roster. He got called up late last season, hitting .250 with the double, a home run, and 3 RBIs. Blandino has fared well in spring ball so far, and like Farmer, Blandino is a versatile infielder capable of playing all 4 infield positions. Blandino has seen 8+ innings of action at shortstop, second, and third base this spring. Something we saw from Blandino last season, albeit in limited action, was an increased walk rate. According to Fangraphs, Blandino's walk rate was 20%, drawing 10 walks and 50 plate appearances during September. Now, we've seen Blandino put up just a 14.2 walk rate thus far in Cactus League action, but players are working on a variety of things during spring training, so I wouldn't read too much into that. Now, Blandino, it seems, is kind of a jack of all trades, but a master of none. He does a lot of things well, but nothing great. That brings us to our third option, Eugenio Suarez. For my money, if he's healthy and he's on right, I'd plug Suarez in as the Reds' starting shortstop on opening day in the event that Galvis is unable to go. Suarez has yet to take the field this spring, as he's currently dealing with an injury of his own. Suarez injured his shoulder in a pool accident earlier this winter, but all reports suggest that he's slowly working his way back. If he makes his return before March 26th, the Reds should insert him into the lineup at the shortstop position. Starting Suarez at shortstop would provide Cincinnati with their best lineup. If Gino takes over at shortstop, where his 183 games of major league experience, the Reds could move Moustakas to third base. Cincinnati would then have a bevy of options to fill in for Moose at second base, all of which would give them better potential to score runs. Dietrich and Van Meter come to mind. Both players offer a left-handed power bat and have shown the ability to cleanly field the position. While we said earlier that the Reds' front office has scoffed at the idea of moving Nick Senzel to shortstop, he did have 28 starts at second base for AAA Louisville in 2018. So, if Freddie Galvis is unable to go, the Reds certainly have options. None of the potential fits are ideal, but depth behind Galvis is scarce to say the least. Galvis hasn't shown much durability since joining the Reds. Hopefully the 30-year-old Venezuelan native can get back on the field by the end of camp, and we won't even have to worry about this anymore. Now, anybody that knows me knows that I love the On This Days. I know the Forgotten Heroes. And today we're going to talk about Wayne Simpson. And to me, in the 60s and 70s, there's 2 guys that are big what-ifs with the Reds organization. Number 1 was Billy McCool in the mid-60s. Number 2, early 70s, Wayne Simpson. Now, Los Angeles had a load of young black baseball talent in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And they produced a number of high-quality major league starters during that time. Now, before Simpson, in that area came Roy White, Reggie Smith, Don Wilson, who else was there? And his contemporaries would have been guys like Lenny Randall, Al Cowens. Later on after that, Mitchell Page, Lonnie Smith. There was a plethora of talent coming out of there. Simpson was also a star quarterback in high school. He was a great athlete. He was big. He was strong. He was fast. He could throw the hell out of the ball. And he played for other noteworthy teams during his high school years. One of the men who helped develop many future big leaguers in L.A. was Chet Brewer, who had a long and successful career in the Negro Leagues from the mid-20s to the late 40s. Now, after he retired as a player, he became a scout. He also started a youth baseball program in Watts. Now, Doc Ellis described what it was like to be one of Mr. Brewer's boys in the 1976 book, In the Country of Baseball. And in 2011, Wayne Simpson, in an interview, also reminisced about it. He said that Brewer was an excellent teacher. I wish I had known more about him at the time. I know more now. We knew he was connected with baseball, but we didn't know his significance, how great and instrumental he was. Now I can appreciate that. Now, Simpson also played for Compton's Magellan C. Mars American Legion team. Other distinguished Mars Post alumni included, once again, Roy White, Reggie Smith, and Don Williams. Simpson began to attract attention while playing Legion ball from big league scouts. Some of his greatest performances included a no-hitter and a 7-inning one-hitter in which he struck out 20. He also pitched a no-hitter for Centennial in March 1967. The Reds made him their first-round choice, the 8th overall pick in the June 1967 amateur draft. The area scout was Larry Barton. The regional scouting supervisor was former Major League outfielder Al Zarilla. Now, Wayne turned down numerous college football scholarships in favor of baseball. Baseball was obviously his first love. He had other reasons for choosing the diamond. Let's face it, in the 1960s, and yes, unless you were going to a black school, the chances of getting to play quarterback were few and far between. Now, Simpson was first assigned to Sioux Falls, South Dakota in the Class A Northern League. Control was Simpson's nemesis, as he averaged 6 walks per 9 innings in his first 3 pro seasons. He also threw 24 wild pitches in 1968, which led to Double-A Southern League, yet he showed clear promise, throwing another no-hitter in the Florida Instructional League that fall and advancing to Triple-A in 1969 ahead of the 69 season. Simpson struggled in Indianapolis in 1969, but he developed mental toughness. Determined to prove, Simpson played in the Caribbean Series right before the 70 season. Simpson was a superb 2-0, including a shutout. In the spring of 1970, the Reds tinkered with Simpson's delivery, which helped rein in some wildness. Simpson also had the luxury of working with Gold Glove winning catcher Johnny Bench, the greatest catcher that ever lived. Simpson not only made the team as a 21-year-old rookie in 1970, he was a revelation. After going 7-13 in the Reds' Triple-A farm system in Indianapolis in 1969, Simpson was almost unbeatable for the Reds. He began the year by winning 13 of his first 14 decisions. The loss came when a drop fly ball allowed 2 earned runs to score. Including tossing a 1-hitter, a 2-hitter, and a 3-hitter, he helped the Reds to an incredible 70-30 mark at the start of the 1970 season. Simpson was the only rookie pitcher selected for the 1970 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. He didn't get to pitch because of elbow pain. In the days before young pitchers were kept on strict pitch counts, Simpson would typically throw a high number of pitches per game, 100 to 130. Though he was more consistently around the plate than he was as a minor leaguer, Simpson still averaged about 4 walks and 6 strikeouts per 9 innings. His ERA stayed below 3.00 for most of the season. Simpson had 14 wins by July 26. He began to suffer from arm soreness, which limited him to a pair of appearances after that, before it was discovered that he had ligament damage. The Reds made it to the World Series in 1970, but Simpson could not pitch in the postseason. He finished the season with a 14-3 record and a 3.02 earned run average. Unfortunately, Simpson's injury predated by 4 years the Tommy John surgery ligament replacement procedure that would help so many major league pitchers effectively recover from such an injury. Simpson pitched another 6 years in the majors after his brilliant rookie season, but he was never to regain the same velocity and effectiveness that he had that rookie season. The Reds are at blame for a lot of what happened to Simpson. He pitched an incredible 400 innings from the beginning of 1969 to July of 1970. Simpson later in life had a tremendous amount of health issues. Doctors told him were related to cortisone shots, which were given to him so he could pitch. Can you imagine Simpson with no arm injury pitching for the Big Red Machine? It may have been enough to turn the Reds from 2 World Series wins in the 70s into 3 or 4. It's all what might have been. There's a lot of that in Cincinnati sports, and it's a shame that Wayne Simpson's career ended the way it did. It's a shame not many people realize how great a pitcher he was in that 1970 season. All right, guys, Make sure you join us every week for the Cincinnati Reds Weekly Show. Follow me at Grueling Truth. You can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find the Grueling Truth. So for now, this has been Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.